know. Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Who are willing and able, please rise for the pledge. Thank you. I have no one who is for public comment items not of the request. Sorry? Is that better? Thank you. Sorry. So we'll move directly into the report of the secretary. Like motion, please approve the minutes.
I'll move we approve the minutes of the 30th meeting? No, yes. 30th?
I'll second.
We're approving. I move we approve them.
And according to my notes, Paul, you were not attending, so you won't be able to. Is that better? Could just be my microphone. Thank you, sir. All right, does anyone have any corrections?
A couple of tiny ones. Okay, on page 2, paragraph. Mr. Ellsworth reported the South Fork will be held in the parking lot of the town hall and to bring your, I would just add a to there. On page 3, first paragraph, about halfway down over to the right, there's a sentence that starts, the decision. This decision was based upon wellness and health for people to be outside. I might word that a little bit just for clarity. The decision was based upon the positive benefit to wellness and mental health for people to be outside. Maybe it's just me. I feel like that might be a little bit. And then number 1, in the report of the superintendent, 1, 2, 3, the third paragraph in that number 1, it starts with the survey asked 5 questions. I think that should be including instead of include. On the next page, page 4, 2, 3, the third sentence, it starts with Mr. Caverly. He reported there is also staff data as there are protections built around health and child care, and that a survey. So maybe add an that. Couple sentences down, actually 2 more Mr. Caverly sentences down. Mr. Caverly stated he had concerns about the budget for the years which has recently passed, and what is that supposed to say? What did I mean to put there? Past, and that this is all the money we have, I think. It just, again, needs a that. And a tiny thing on number 2, way down below that first sentence, just take out the space after August 5th. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Lisa. Anyone else? In that case, all in favor? Thank you. That's 5-0 with Mr. Stanley abstaining. Okay, the next item on the agenda is to approve the minutes of the special meeting of, this says Wednesday, July 23rd. I believe it was Thursday, July 23rd? Yes.
All right, I'll move we approve the minutes of the special meeting of Thursday, July 23rd.
I'll second that.
Okay, Matt.
For Lisa.
Matt wins.
Any comments or observations on those minutes? It was a relatively brief meeting. Okay, if there are no comments, then all in favor? Excellent, 6-0, thank you. That moves us into the report of the chair. First item is that the next town officials meeting will be held next Wednesday on the 12th of August, and I believe that's at 9:30, Lisa, 9:30? And it will be via Zoom. And
Mr. Long needs to be invited to that.
yes, I'd like to have that invite in my calendar. Thank you.
I think that's fine. I can forward it too.
Thank you. The second item on the report of the chair is with regard to opening day. We have traditionally, the board has traditionally participated in the opening day for faculty and staff. One of my favorite things to do in the past has been to have the opportunity, the honor really, to introduce the new faculty at that meeting. And we typically split up the new faculty by building among the board members who are able to attend. What we don't yet know is when that will happen or what it will look like.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes. So once we establish our plan, we can start to think about what the opening day may look like. Obviously, with the 50-person capacity rule that we have in the auditorium, we couldn't do a district-wide meeting, so we may need to consider doing something via Zoom or maybe building by building, depending on how things would work. So we'll do some planning around that and certainly gather your feedback as to what you'd like to do, but it is an important day just to be able to bring everybody together if at all possible. So
Okay.
perfect.
So stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Yeah.
That leads us into the report of the superintendent and that which we have all been waiting for.
So I've got to back up so I can be able to see. I just first of all wanted to thank for the opportunity to do this. We have had a group of people working tirelessly to be able to put this together. It's a lot of information gathering. It's a lot of time and energy and really trying to focus on what's best for students. I appreciate the board's opportunity they're giving us this evening to kind of share our plan with everybody. This is a hybrid plan. The state of Maine has asked us to create 3 plans. The first plan is a full reopening plan, and at this point that's not possible with the current safety regulations that we have across the district. They've also asked to go to a fully remote plan, and that is not the plan that we're recommending today. The recommended plan for us is going to be on this hybrid model, which is a little bit of a combination of a lot of things. I do want to say right off the bat that we are still waiting for some guidance from the CDC on how to handle if there were a COVID case that was reported within the schools. There is a note on the CDC website which basically says, in the event, please contact the CDC, and that's the process. But the deeper questions are, how do you handle it on a classroom basis? How does the contact tracing look like? How does the school handle it? And therefore, how does the district handle it? And that clarity has not been provided yet. We hope within the next week that will be provided. Eileen King from Maine School Management has assured us that that's on everybody's radar right now, but we still have not received that document. I want to be clear, though, that we will not bring students back until we have a plan in place. And if the CDC or the state of Maine can't provide a plan by the time we bring students back, we will create one using York Hospital and our district nurses. So just to provide clarity for everybody, because obviously safety is the top priority. So what data and information do we use? We did a couple of parent surveys. I also received upwards of 100 emails from families, adding their input, asking questions, which was very valuable. The Maine Department of Education created some guidelines for us. There are CDC recommendations, there are Maine State School Nurses guidelines, and there's a York County Superintendent collaboration. And so every Friday, the York County superintendents have met and been able to try to correlate with each other of what everybody was doing and different ideas and sharing of ideas and sharing of processes that we may have. That was a really valuable part of this process for us, just to make sure to test our thinking and to be able to think a little bit outside the box. This is not an exaggeration. This is the reopening of the reentry plan, and this is the committee of people that were involved in it. As you can see, it's a substantial number of people. Where there's teachers across the district, there's custodians, there's transportation, there's administrative staff. There's quite a group of people who put a tremendous amount of work into this. This work included thinking about big picture and trying to decipher what CDC guidelines mean and what it means for students in the classroom, to literally measuring desks to make sure we had enough space in between the desks to accommodate the maximum number of students we could safely. A tremendous amount of work, and I'm extremely thankful. You will be receiving a document tonight that would be as you have right now, our proposed plan. As you can see, it's a very lengthy plan. It's about 60 pages. There was a tireless amount of work that was put into that, and I just need to recognize, Heidi and Ryan for their time of being able to put it all together and putting it in a format that makes sense and people can read and not feel overwhelmed with the amount of information there is there. So what are the guiding principles? Like, how do you make this decision? What do you base that on? And so for us, the first thing was this: safety. What can we do to keep kids and staff safe? So first of all, right out of the main Department of Education guidelines, all staff and students are required to wear masks, and that's just something that we're going to have to deal with and work our way through. But we're going to treat that like it would be going into a restaurant saying you need to have shoes when you go on to get served. So students and staff are going to be expected to wear masks. There are some caveats around some disabilities. For younger students, that would allow a face shield. We upgraded the HVAC system to include a UV ionization. So what the heck does that mean, John? So basically what we did is we looked at our HVAC system, and there's a rate of turnover that all rooms in a building should have per minute. And what we've done is we've maximized that as much as we can. So if it's, and I may get the numbers wrong, but it's basically like 1.4 turnovers per minute, and we're trying to double that to increase the airflow in those classrooms. The fine line with that is that obviously as those motors are running more, maybe louder, so we're trying to find that baseline where we can have it but not affect the quality of instruction. In addition, the school district invested about $61,000 in providing a UV ionization system in all of our air handlers. So every classroom across the district will have a UV ionization cleaned air, so the air will go through. Basically, it goes through an ultraviolet light. The ultraviolet light kills viruses that are in the air, and as that air recirculates. That installation begins hopefully by the end of this week. It's not clear when the final parts will come in because obviously there's a high demand on these types of equipment. This Monday, we did some district training with our custodians on hygiene protocols and practices. Cleanorama is our vendor that we use for this type of products. They were actually correlating with the state of Maine around safe practices, and so they actually were one of the key people who created the plan for the state, so they came down and did a full training with all of our custodial staff on Monday. One of the things that we talk about is having some outdoor space and how do we maximize that. So we actually purchased 7 tents to create additional outdoor space for schools. And so when we talk about tents, we tried to purchase some smaller tents at our schools for our summer school work. Those are obviously very small, meant for 2 or 3 people at one time. The tents that we ordered are 100 by 40 feet long. So there's about 4,000 square feet of additional space that we'll be able to access once the school year starts. We had to modify our school schedule to allow for cleaning for the buses between runs. And so part of the guidelines are that if we have a 2-run system, so in the morning, our middle school and high school do a run that gets to school basically at 7:30. Then there's a second run for the elementary schools, and we use the same buses. And so between those runs, we needed to build about a 30 to 40-minute window where those buses could be fully disinfected in between those runs. So those buses are getting cleaned 3 to 4 times a day, depending on how much those buses are used. So we needed to build additional time to be able to do that. So therefore, there will be a slight change in the schedule. We have purchased PPE, which is protective devices for all of our staff. And so we've gone as far as to order various different types of face masks to include shields, goggles. If people prefer that, we've ordered about 3 or 4 different various types of masks that may be appropriate. We just want to make sure our staff is comfortable and feel safe and also feel supported in this. Obviously, we want to do what's best for kids, and we're all trying to pull to work together. But there's some concerns. This is a scary time for the whole country, and we want to be mindful of that and work and support our staff who's so important to us. We've also talked about creating smaller class sizes to meet recommended social distancing guidelines. So what does that mean? So what we have said is that our desks are going to be 6 feet or greater apart. And so what we're trying to do now is create that space within the classroom. And someone who's going to read the guidelines might say, hey, wait a second, the guidelines say it can be a 3-foot minimum. The reality is if you're in an elementary school classroom or high school classroom, if we put those desks 6 feet apart, that still allows people to travel in the classroom and not violate that 3 feet minimum window. And so if we put everybody in there at 3 feet and people started moving around, we could not maintain that social distancing. And therefore, we had to reduce the number of students that were in a classroom at a given time. Class sizes across the district, we're going to be in the ballpark of 9 to 12 students, roughly. And it's going to be based on the size of a classroom. And then, the tricky part is we've also tried to create a smaller cohort of students. And so we say a cohort, we're trying to keep kids together as much as we can in the event that there were a positive test. It would affect fewer people, and so we're trying to contain that as much as possible. So in essence, we're trying to minimize, at the elementary schools, you're going to work with 10 kids, let's just say, and that's going to be your cohort of students that you're going to work with every day to try to minimize that. The difficult task is creating cohorts at the high school, and we're still working out the details of that, and it's trying to maintain a schedule that offers a great deal of flexibility, but at the same time tries to add the best safety practices we can for those students. Social, emotional, mental health, and I think this is one of the things that sometimes gets overlooked, is that there's some real needs that are emerging in our communities and in our country around, the students are missing that connection, that mental health piece. You see the rates were reported recently of drug and alcohol use have been on the rise. Mental health issues have been on the rise. So we've created a tier system support for students where we're working with training our staff. We're creating small class sizes to provide more individualized support. And then we're prioritizing safe social interactions, both in person and remote. So we're just trying to make sure that we get that social interaction. So one of the questions that comes up a lot for us is like, what was the feedback from families? What was the feedback from families? So this was one of the things at the elementary schools that was crystal clear, is that people wanted that social interaction with their child on a regular basis. That was something that they were missing dearly in the fall, in the springtime, and so we wanted to make sure as we built our system, that was one of the data points that we used. Academic programming and progress. Again, smaller class sizes to provide more individualized support, purchasing of an online curriculum licenses to support remote learning, and then we need to prioritize our core instruction. I mean, this is going to look different. There's no two ways around it. What school looked like in the fall of 2018 when we all came back and took for granted that freedom of having 25 students in a class, it's not going to look like that. And so some of the offerings that we may have may need to be restricted. We may need to focus more on more on the core curriculum and less on some of the individualized elective courses that kids can take, particularly at the high school. So this has been a real point of confusion over the last little bit. It's regarding what does green mean? And so the state of Maine kind of created these three color coding systems. Red, which means the country is at high risk of COVID, and in-person instruction is not advisable. And so that's pretty clear for everybody. We can't do in-person instruction if we're in red. Yellow says categorized, suggests that only the county that has elevated risk of COVID spread, and that the schools may consider hybrid instructional models as a way to reduce the number of people in schools and classrooms at any one time. And so again, okay, yellow in the middle. I understand a hybrid, I understand the middle part. This is where it gets a little bit confusing because I think people interpreted green as meaning go. We're all full go back, and that is not the case. What it really says is that there is a relatively low risk of COVID in this area. So all the counties in Maine, all 16 were coded as green, but it doesn't mean all of the recommendations and safety protocols are thrown out the window. Those are all still in place. So we need to still maintain social distancing guidelines, have students wear masks. And really the difference between yellow and green is really kind of pushing people into the hybrid model in yellow, but the green really, from a restrictive standpoint, there is no difference. And so what do we do? I just think in order to make things clearer for our families, we created a purple. And what purple means basically is we're going to go back to what that 2018 looked like. We're going to say, hey, look, there's no restrictions. We can have class sizes of 26 again in Algebra 1 at Marshall Middle School. We can have 400 kids in the lunchroom at the cafeteria. There's no problems with that. But we're not there now. And so this was just add some clarity for people around what the green means. So I think people, particularly on social media, kind of heard that green and kind of grabbed onto it and said, we're going to all be going back. And that's not what we can do. So what is some information that we looked at as we kind of built this plan? It's adherence to the MODE guidelines, the CDC guidelines, the parental feedback part, accommodations for child care considerations, health issues, Family First COVID Act, FMLA. I mean, so there's, for our staff, they have protections under the law, and we want to make sure that if we have staff who have health issues, that we protect them. They're a valuable resource for us, and they're part of our family, and we want to make sure that we're doing right by our staff. And I've always believed that, the better we can treat our staff and support our staff, the better they can support and treat our students, and I think that's a really important correlation, and so this is part of what we have to do when we build our plan. Our physical plant square footage, some classrooms are bigger than others, and so that's one of the issues we need to think about. Transportation considerations, so for instance, One of our recommendations is going to be around, for the first 2 weeks of school, having that half-day program in place at the elementary schools. And when we kind of broke it down, we could not sustain doing a split half-day between the two schools with our bus drivers. We have a very limited driving pool right now, and then if we were to do that, we would actually be asking people to drive upwards of 50 hours a week, which is just a great strain on them over a long period of time. Food service guidelines is something that's important in being able to offer those free and reduced meals to families that are in need. Our COVID relief fund allocation, so we were provided money from the federal government for COVID relief. We're asking for a parental commitment tonight. If this plan is approved, we will be sending an email to parents, kind of giving them a copy of the plan, giving them a commitment link that says, look, we're asking you make a commitment from now until January as to what type of learning you're going to activate. And then building hygiene, just a really important part of being able to maintain that on a regular basis. So a snapshot of what the building plans look like. As you can see, pre-K we're treating a certain way. That should be pre-K and K. Grades 1 to 5, there's going to be a plan. Grades 6 to 8, there's a plan, and then grades 9 to 12, there'll be a plan. And so what I'd like to do is just turn it over to our building administrators, and they can talk a little bit just generally about the plan. And then if there's any questions, I can certainly answer those, and I could also provide some further clarity if needed. Does that make sense to everybody? Any questions before we go to the next part? Fantastic. Do we want to start with the pre-K? Nana, do you mind just sharing that a little bit? Perfect. So basically, what we just talked about was grades 1 through 5. There's going to be two options for families. One option would be a fully remote learning academy, and then our goal is to go into a full day in-person instruction Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Here's the catch, that we are basing this on the 2 rounds of surveys that we did. And so parents were consistent in saying that about 20% of the parents in the community identified that they would not send their children to school until there was a COVID vaccine found. And so if that number holds true, we are going to be able to implement that plan. The problem is if that number lowers, we are not going to be able to implement that plan, and we would be forced to go into some type of a hybrid model. And so what we're going to do is that if this plan is approved, we will send out a survey tonight. We're going to ask for that survey to be back by Sunday. We also understand that we would need to take some time to be able to get families who may have missed it, to be able to reach out to them. But the question mark is going to be, how do those numbers come out? So we're going to have to do some numbers crunching. And when I tell you that we maximized every space in the buildings, that is not an exaggeration. We are actually building a classroom at Marshall Great Works School. We are hiring 9 staff members to be able to do that, so we're putting our resources in as best we can to be able to get our grades 1 to 5 back. The question that inevitably is going to happen is, why would you pick 1 through 5? And so what we really felt like philosophically is that those kids were most adversely affected by the remote learning, where a lot of that pressure was put on parents and families to have to provide that level of instruction, and we felt like getting that feedback, particularly from parents saying they wanted that face-to-face interaction. Our staff at the elementary schools also really felt like that face-to-face interaction was extremely important. So that's why we chose to make that difference there. As you can decipher, there will be a change in pre-K and K. We had to make some compromises someplace around space and staffing, and to be able to afford what we wanted to do. So that, for 1 year, hopefully 1 year, our kindergarten programs would go back to half-day programs, and we would scale back our pre-K offerings, and then we would also offer remote learning in both of those situations. Next is Marshall Middle School. Tony, do you want to go up and just kind of give us a brief overview of Marshall Middle School?
So the 2 plans that we have to return to instruction will be is we're going to do a full remote, and we'll also be doing a hybrid, kind of an in-person with some remote supplement to it. The full remote and the hybrid plans will be, we're going to divide our student populations into two groups. We'll have an A to K group, which will receive their instruction on Mondays and Tuesdays, and we'll have an L to Z group that will receive their instruction on Thursdays and Fridays. And then on Wednesdays, that will be a remediation, intervention, extension day for all students, whether they're receiving in-person or a full remote program. Our school day will begin at 7:30 in the morning. We'll want students to have arrived in our building by 7:20 if they're receiving in-person, but certainly be logged online, at that time in the morning to be able to begin their instructional day. And our day will conclude at about 1:50 in the afternoon. So that's what we'll be doing at the middle
And just to
school.
reiterate, the reason that the middle school and high school will start at 7:30, which is the normal schedule, and we will push back the start of the elementary schools, and we did that by about a 30 to 40-minute window, and that allows for the additional cleaning time for the buses. In the afternoon, it will be the opposite, with the middle school and high school will get done slightly earlier than normal, and then the elementary schools would end at the normal, 3 to 3:10 range. So then, again, that's about the bus cleaning. Next would be Marshall High School. Rob, if you just kind of share a brief overview with us.
Sure. Thank you, John. Just to reemphasize a few things from the guidelines, like we did across the district, we really emphasized and kind of distilled everything into health. And so it was physical health, emotional health, and our academic health. So at the high school level, we are really concerned with, obviously, the students now, but also we outface to students after school in their careers and their college plans. So we have a transcript at the end of ours, so we really try to do and serve a lot of masters here. So just a little context. We will, as will the rest of the district, have a full remote option at the high school level, again, to try to maintain physical health, emotional health, and the integrity of the academic experience the student was hoping for when they left in the spring. That remote option will consist of asynchronous work, synchronous work, meaning students would access materials. Students would have some synchronous time with teachers. It would be limiting because they wouldn't be on site. And then there could be the inclusion of some third-party platforms that students would access so that they have that full academic experience. So our remote option would be, at the high school level, feel a little bit more self-directed. There would be time where they can engage directly with teachers, a little bit less if they went on site. And then in order for us to maintain the integrity of their hopes and dreams, we might have to have some third-party platforms that they would take a course through, University of Maine or that type of thing. But again, there will be a full remote option. Our hybrid is broken down where we'd have a purple cohort and a white cohort. And the purple cohort, for example, would be on site Monday and Tuesday. On Wednesday, both the purple and white cohorts could join on our intervention remote day. And then on Thursday and Friday, I just lost track. Are the white people? Are the white cohort still? Yeah, the white cohort would be coming on site. And then we would consider a 2-week rotation on that for 2 reasons. One, it kind of allows us to have the same group coming in for a sustained period of time. At the high school, it's much more difficult to cohort with the same 30 or so students in the same room. Also, we would do, as I said, for example, a 1, 2, 3, 4 rotation, not a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, because it would cut in half the transitions, so we'd only have 4 transitions instead of 8 transitions. And so students would be on site twice, would be remote 3 days. For right now, the plan is for a 2-week. The concept is alternating. We'll relook at it and see if a 1-week rotation works best so the regression doesn't occur. But basically, you'd be on site for 2 days, you'd be remote for 3 days, and then what we would do is we'd switch, and then 5, 6, 7, 8. The reason I'm saying 8 instead of 7, as John mentioned, in order for us to get class sizes down, we had to add an 8th period to the day to create more sections, to distribute the students accordingly so that our class sizes would be 10 or fewer. And I think that's the highlights.
I think there's two important points about the high school. There is a possibility, and we haven't worked out these details yet, but I just think it's important to get on people's radar that there may be some classes, that maybe some of those more specialized classes that may be taught remote even though a student becomes in person. And so we might have a person who's trained in a particular AP class or a high-level music class or what have you, and that may require the full remote because there may be some other considerations that we have to take into effect. So just to be 100% transparent with that. Are there any questions about the plan? I think from the emails that I received, I think one of the things from the last survey that clearly people were frustrated that they didn't feel like their voice was heard about the fully return to instruction. I think they felt like we didn't ask a survey question about that. So we did ask that survey question in the first survey, and I believe it was 84%, is that right? 75% of people we preferred that option. As we went through this, there was not a way to do that. And so this is probably the simplest explanation I can give to people. And I'm not going to even go into the staffing and people needing medical accommodations, but let's just do class size policy. So we talk about that a lot. And so our class size policy at the high school ranges from 18 to 25. And so we did a lot of work in the spring talking about what our class size numbers look like. And so our average class size at Marshwood High School is approximately 22 students. It might be 21 and change, but you get the idea. And so if you just take that number by itself and you have those kids, you would have to double the size of our teaching staff to get the class sizes down to 10 or 11. And so we might have a little bit of space, but to do that, it's not manageable. On top of the fact of now you have 700 students that you're trying to provide lunch to, that you're trying to get to and from the bus. I mean, there's just a lot of variables that you don't necessarily think about. The passing time in the hallways, keeping that social distancing. If you have, again, if you have 22 people in the classroom, there's no way to guarantee that 3-foot minimum requirement. And so, I know that's a question that people feel passionately about. Sixth graders, seventh graders, eighth graders, seniors. I believe me, I understand that. I got a lot of emails where people talking about, worried about their experience that their child is going to have, and they're looking forward to the senior year. And believe me, as a parent of a last year senior, I empathize. I can hear you. But just from a safety perspective, we couldn't do that. Ultimately, for me, I need to be able to look people in the eyes and say, I did the best thing I could do to keep people safe. And that is my number one charge. And so that 6-foot piece was something that I felt very strongly about. And it was important that, I live in this community. My children have gone to these schools. My wife works in these schools. It is important that we're able to keep kids safe, first and foremost. So I think this plan, with a return option, this offers us the best thing that we can do. So, is there any questions from the public? Is that okay if I open up? Questions from the public anywhere? Again, I just want to reiterate one thing because this is where it gets confusing, and I just want to be perfectly clear that grades 1 through 5 is going to depend on the feedback that we get back. If people hold true to what we were told in the 2 previous surveys, which is that 20% roughly will not be returning, we will be able to offer that option. If that number changes, we lose the flexibility to be able to do that. And so I don't want to deliver a false promise. I want to be 100% clear with people. It is our hope to be able to do that. As I said, we've hired additional staff. We've created more rooms. Our staff's working incredibly hard. They're being really flexible around a very stressful time and trying to find a way to do what's best for kids, but we are limited in our capacity. And so that will be one of the issues that we're going to have to face if those numbers don't come out correct. Now, people might say, well, okay, then we got to wait again. The reality is that we will know that if people can get the survey data back to us quickly, we can then figure out where we are, and we hope to be able to notify people kind of the outcome of those numbers by midweek next week. At the same time, if we don't get feedback back from people, it makes it really difficult for us to do that. So I would just encourage any members of the community to please get the feedback or the commitment form back as quickly as possible. Why do we say we ask for a commitment between now and January? Because the reality is I can't keep changing the system every day depending on who's coming to school and who's not coming to school. So if we're going to build this literally comes down to class size. And so if people make that commitment, we're going to ask them to hold that commitment through January. I understand that if people get there and they feel uncomfortable, we probably would have more flexibility around that with the remote learning, but we would not have the flexibility about adding more people to our classroom size because, again, we are restricted by our facilities. So, the last thing that my next part of the agenda is that one of the parts of our plan would involve a change in the start of the school year. Currently, we are asking staff to be back on August 31st, which is a Monday. They would work the 31st, 2nd, 3rd, 31st, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, which is 4 days. We had originally planned to have students back on the 1st. My recommendation right now is that we need to be able to take those first 4 days of school. We need to get some safety protocols in place. We need to do some training with our staff, and we have to give our staff an opportunity, if they're going to build that remote classroom, to be able to do that, to be able to get their heads around the schedule, because it is going to make things drastically different for a lot of people. So that my recommendation would be that we would move the start of school back for students to that next week. In addition to that, I just want to be clear that part of the plan is to offer a soft opening. And when I say that, what does that mean is that we're going to start off for the first 2 weeks with half days for our elementary school kids. And why is that? You know, the reason for that is we've got to be able to build capacity around these students wearing the masks for the entire day. To have students in masks for 6 hours is a lot. It's a big ask for people. So we've got to be able to build up some stamina with that with kids. And those first 2 weeks are going to be based on the reality of like that mental health piece of making connections and building routines. You know, for kids, it's going to be new to be walking down the hallway, 6 feet apart. If you were to walk into our schools and you look at the plan, you'll see that there literally are lines on the floor what that looks like. So that is one of the things that we're going to ask to be able to build things. That also allows us a 2-week window to try to, if there's issues, that we can be able to fix things quickly, as opposed to if we brought everybody back, it'd be much more difficult to be able to do that once the full plane is in the air, so to speak. So we have some flexibility. So, all set? Okay. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. I think we'll hold board discussion until we get to the motion, if that's okay with everyone. Okay, we have no correspondence to report on. And as regards the committees, the Facilities and Finance Committee will next meet on September 16th. And we have yet to schedule the Education Policy Committee's next meeting, but it would likely be sometime in late September, I would guess.
I believe it's the 4th week in September,
Okay.
the fourth Wednesday of September, excuse me.
Okay, thank you. Which brings us to new business, of which we have a great deal tonight. So I would ask, please, for a motion to approve the COVID-19 pandemic plan.
I'll move we approve the COVID-19 pandemic school reopening and reentry plan.
I'll second.
I'd like to comment first. First, for the record, the board has participated in about 4.5 hours of workshops with the team that developed this plan over the past couple of weeks. So as the plan matured and it was ready for the board to start considering, we had the opportunity to interact with the folks, to ask our questions, to make suggestions. I thought that was a really, really productive process. I just want to say that I am so impressed with the professionalism, the consummate professionalism of the people on this committee and all of the people that they're consulting with. These are not ordinary times. As much as we'd like it to be normal, it's not. We're in a pandemic, and I think that what you folks have done around bringing together a plan that looks like it is going to work for pretty much everyone is astonishing. I'm just so impressed with the collegiality, the pulling together, the agreement to disagree at times, but always pulling for the same goal and working towards getting those priorities accommodated. And I just want to thank everybody. I would say on behalf of the board, I'll invite you all to add to that, but this has been a truly impressive effort. Thank you.
I'm just going to second that. It's been an incredible process to watch and to be a part of, and impressive is an understatement in terms of just the sheer amount of dedication and work and effort and optimism, and I know that was hard at times, that the entire task force put into this for hours and hours, probably hundreds of hours over the course of this summer. So I just want to make sure that our families and our community know how much effort has gone into all of this. It has not been an overnight process or a quick decision-making thing whatsoever. There's been a lot of variables involved, and it's really phenomenal that such a document has been put together with so many options that not only address the academic needs of our students, but also the safety, the social emotional needs, and everything else that we know is so important. So thank you so much to the task force and John and everybody, Heidi, Ryan, everyone who's been involved. I think the community is going to be really impressed. Parents, you're going to be really impressed when you get this document tonight. I encourage you to take your time with it. It's a lot to digest. Focus on your own schools would be my suggestion, and not get too caught up in the rest of it. But just to clarify what John was saying earlier, it's going to be really important that you find that commitment form that you're going to be receiving as well, and decide which you're going to do, which option, full remote, not full remote. Make that decision by Sunday, as it's absolutely imperative that the district gets those numbers back in order to decide on the next steps. Thank you.
Any other board members wish to comment? Okay. Anybody else have a comment or question?
Just a question about if you get a very large number of people who say they don't want to send their kids back, is there any thought to extending those 2 days for the people who did? If the numbers now support more classroom time, would we look at that?
Can you explain that a little bit more for me? I want to make sure I answer what you're asking.
So the surveys said about 20%.
Correct.
If 40% say, no, I'm keeping my kid home,
Yep.
on the commitment piece, would there be any adjustment to the 2 days?
No,
In
no.
school.
We feel like with the online remote academy, we can accommodate higher numbers there. What we had planned for at the elementary schools was basically 30% had said they would prefer the remote as opposed to a hybrid, and so that number's anywhere from 20 to 30%. If we, we were more apt to be able to handle the 30 to 35% remote as opposed to the 15 who would choose remote. So I think that as the numbers kind of go more towards remote, we're okay. If they get closer to return, that's when it gets a little dicey.
Okay.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, absolutely. Can I just say one other thing? And this was like building a house, and this is the analogy that I used. And this is the frame, and we haven't designed the living room yet, and we haven't decided the kitchen yet, and we haven't designed all the bedrooms yet. But we have a plan, and over the next 3 weeks, some of those details will start to get worked out. Exactly what the schedule during the day will look like, we will start to work that out. What does the duty in the morning look like? What does arrival look like? What does departure look like? What does lunch look like? We have plans for those, but now if we can get this plan approved, we have the frame built to the house, and now we can start worrying about those other types of details. Obviously, it's been part of the conversation. We're cognizant of that, but there's still work to do. And so that is part of our work will be reaching out to staff members and as we build these plans to be able to include them in that process to make sure that their voices are heard around what this looks like as far as, those types of questions that are out there. So.
If there are no further comments, all in favor? 6-0. Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the change to the school calendar?
I'll move that we approve the change to the 2020-2021 school calendar.
I'll second.
John, was there anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that the Maine Department of Education has given us some variance on the 175 student days, and so this would give us 171 student days and would increase the amount of professional development that we would offer. But I just wanted to make sure that people understood that it didn't mean we were going to be going deeper into the summertime in the spring, but it would just be able to reallocate those days to really focus on the professional development we would need as we implement the system.
John, did you just want to also mention over here, Jen, that Thursdays weren't going to be, there's not going to be any more remote Thursdays,
absolutely.
correct, still?
Yeah, thank you. And so one of the compromises that we had to make is by shortening the school days, we could not maintain the Remote Start Thursday program that we had, so we will put that on the back burner for a year. We are trying to build some time into the current schedule to allow staff to have some time to work together and collaborate, because it's going to be really important that they have an opportunity to stay on target and support each other in this process, because this is going to be new for all of us. So thank you.
Okay, all in favor? That is also 6-0. Good. We have a number of nominations for new staff. Can I please have a motion to nominate Karen Brown?
I move that we nominate Karen Brown, first-year probationary school-based social worker, elementary, MA 16, 77,377, school year 2020-2021.
Second.
John, any comments?
Yeah, absolutely. Karen is coming to us with a great deal of experience. She'll be a school-based social worker. Karen has her Bachelor's of Science degree from Worcester State University, and then she has her Master's of Social Work from the University of New England in Westbrook. She was a former wellness counselor here at Marshwood High School years ago. Also worked at CSI, which is the Counseling Services Inc. at Asako. Just a great student-centered person. We're really looking forward to her joining that team. And obviously, as we transition into this time, mental health is really something that we're very concerned about, particularly at our elementary school levels, and that really is going to be part of what she will do. For clarity, part of her position would be based around meeting the requirements in some special education plans, but the other part is really being a community facilitator for families. So if their children are having trouble, someone to reach out to be a great contact, to be able to not necessarily provide counseling services herself, but to be able to be a facilitator to get the services that the child needs.
Any other questions? Okay, all in favor? 6-0. May I have a motion, please, to nominate Thomas Maciso? Please.
I'd like to make a motion for consideration and action to nominate Thomas Maciso, first-year probationary special education teacher, resource room / behavioral focus at Marshwood High School, BA 01, salary $43,842 for the school year 2020 to 21.
I'll second.
Perfect. So Thomas has worked at RSU 21 for a great number of years as an Ed Tech and an Ed Tech 3. Also had a chance to work with some specific behavioral and job to work opportunities at the school. And so his references were fantastic. He's excited about joining us. Really looking forward to trying to work on creating the behavioral program here at Marshwood High School and really trying to focus some of our skill sets around helping service those students who may struggle a little bit more with behaviors in the course of a school day. So that's one of the areas that we identified as need as we went into the school year. So we were able to transition this position.
Okay, all in favor? That's 6-0. Thank you. May I have a motion to nominate Kayla Perry?
And I'll move that we nominate Kayla Perry, first-year probationary elementary teacher at Elliott Elementary School, one-year position BA 01, $43,843 for the 2020-2021 school year.
Second.
So sometimes when you walk out of an interview, you're thrilled and you're wonderful for the opportunity, and to see one of your former students come back and be offered a position as an elementary school teacher where she went to school was just so exciting. And Kayla, it just had such great positive energy, looking forward to the opportunity, really has had some online teaching experience when she was doing her student teaching, and just really is ready to embrace kind of the values that we have as a community. And so we're fortunate that she was available, and she wasn't sure if she wanted to move back to Maine or not, and the position at Elliott came available, and so she she applied, and we're tickled to death to have her, so we're excited.
All in favor? 6-0. May I have a nomination for Ruth Welsford? A motion, please.
I move we nominate Ruth Wellsford, first-year probationary elementary teacher at Elliott Elementary School, one-year position, MA 15 at $73,472 for the school year 2020-21, pending approval of COVID-19 pandemic MSAD 35 school reopening and reentry plan.
I'll second.
So I just want to add a little bit of clarity around these next two positions. And so these positions were contingent upon the plan being approved. And the reason for that is these are the beginning of the positions that we're looking to add in order to implement the elementary school program that we're hoping to commit to. So these are positions that we're leveraging the CRF money and some of our CARES money, and then also not filling some different positions within the district to be able to pay for. We haven't cut any staff. That's not the intention district-wide. But this is how this is going to be paid for. So you'll start seeing some more of these come through. At our next meeting, what I will do is kind of give you a financial breakdown of how we're investing the CARES money so people have an understanding where that money is going and how we're making these things work. I do want to mention that the CRF money, that one of the caveats with that is that it has to be spent by December 30th, and so that creates a unique situation in that you can't put an entire position under that financial resource, so we can only put 40% roughly of that position under that resource. So it forces us to have to leverage other monies to be able to put together with it to make the position. So although it's wonderful to have the money, there is some challenges that we have to adjust, particularly when we look at hiring staff. So Ruth moved back to New England, where she lived in New Hampshire. She went to the University of Maine, as well as King State College. She has moved around a little bit, but recently coming back from Portland, Oregon, has a great deal of experience. It was just refreshing to talk to somebody who was just excited about the opportunity and ready to join the team at Elliott Elementary School. So I just need to say how fortunate we are to have a school district where we can attract such quality candidates so late in the process. And obviously a lot of school districts are in the same situation, but to have these candidates kind of come forward in the last 3 weeks is really a testament to the community that we live in. So thank you.
All in favor? 6-0. May I have a motion to nominate Grace McLeod?
I move to nominate Grace McLeod, first-year probationary elementary teacher to Elliott Elementary School, one-year position, BA01, $42,843, school year 2020 to 2021, pending approval of COVID-19 pandemic, MSAD 35 school reopening and reentry plan.
Second.
So Grace will be joining us as a first-year teacher. She just finished school in Florida and is moving back to the area. Has some experience, in Portsmouth. Again, full of energy, excited to be a part of our community. Some great questions today. Again, having some experience on the online platform of how to help navigate students is really just such a critical skill set right now. And Grace, we're fortunate that she's willing to work for us.
All in favor? 6-0. Thank you. It looks like these next three motions have to do with lease purchases for various things. May I have a motion to approve the authorized lease purchase of HVAC upgrades?
I move we approve the resolution to authorize lease purchase of HVAC upgrades at MMS and GWS in the principal amount of $248,126.
I'll second.
So this is the basically, we have the front end, which is the computer system that we recently had put in, and then there's the back end, which is kind of the boilers itself. And so this is the communication system between those two systems that we're putting in at the Great Works School and at Marshall Middle School. So what it allows us to do is update the technology so we can better control the airflow and the heating systems at the school. So no more walking into classrooms at Marshall Great Works School where it's 64 degrees and people are wearing 3 sweatshirts, so this is a great opportunity for that. And obviously very good timing in the fact of getting it updated as we're looking to increase the airflow in those buildings as well. This is not difficult. This is not the ionization system, though. This is what we had talked about earlier.
Any questions? All those in favor? That is 6-0. May I have a motion to approve the lease purchase of 2 buses?
I'll move that we approve resolution to authorize lease purchase of 2 school buses in the principal amount of $180,617.55.
Second.
So this is part of our typical purchasing cycle, where we're purchasing two buses that was budgeted for in our budget that was approved back in July. This is going to be a lease that we will, again, maintain for that 5-year lease and stay on the current cycle that we're on. Again, this is not CRF money. This is budget money that was approved as we voted in July.
All those in favor? 6-0. Lastly, may I have a motion to approve the lease purchase of technology equipment?
I move to approve the resolution to authorize lease purchase of technology equipment in the principal amount of $150,000.
Second.
So to kind of go back to a program that Dr. Nash started years ago, is that we basically budget $50,000 a year for each one of these individual leases, and I believe it's a 3-year leasing cycle that we have. And this allows us to leverage that $50,000 into a $100,000 or $150,000 to be able to spend over that 3-year period and pay that down, and it allows us to keep our technology up to date. Obviously, in the state that we're in, with the possible remote situation that we're talking about, this is critical. And again, I just want to harken back to where we were in the springtime and the ability that we were able to be flexible within our technology department to offer that Wi-Fi services to students in the district who didn't have that opportunity, and really trying to create the equitable playing field for all, something that we're committed to, and we're working hard at that, but this is part of that, being able to maintain that as we look for new devices. And again, this was in the budget.
All those in favor? 6-0. Before we adjourn, do any of the board members have anything else they'd like to add? Any of the administrators or anyone else present? Okay. In that case, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
No, you have to make
You
the
want me
motion.
to? Okay. I motion to adjourn.
Yep.
And
I'll second.
Excellent. All those in favor? That's 6-0. We are adjourned. Thank you all.